It's April 27th, 1521. On a tiny island in the Philippines, a Spanish commander steps ashore with just 49 heavily armed soldiers. Full steel armor, swords, crossbows, and firearms. He has never tasted defeat. He has already brought entire kingdoms to heel. His name is Ferdinand Magellan, and within less than an hour, he will be dead. Cut down by a local warrior chief, whose battlefield methods would, centuries later, echo through modern military doctrine. This is the story of Lapu-Lapu, a minor island chief who turned his home territory into a battlefield and helped demonstrate the principles we now associate with asymmetric warfare. Picture Mactan Island at daybreak. The tide is low. Magellan's men stand in full armor, helmets, chest plates, leg guards, completely confident in their superiority. And that confidence wasn't entirely baseless. For nearly 2 years, Magellan's expedition had traveled across the world. They had fought opponents in Africa, Indonesia, and the Philippines. Again and again, the same formula seemed to work: steel over wood, gunpowder over arrows. European weapons appeared unbeatable, but Lapu-Lapu broke that formula. He didn't try to match Spanish steel with better steel. He didn't try to beat gunpowder with gunpowder. Instead, he turned the Spanish advantages into weaknesses, and that's where the 6 tactics begin. Tactic number 1, use the environment. Lapu-Lapu refused to meet the Spanish on their terms. He chose the battlefield himself. The shoreline, shallow tidal water, soft, waterlogged ground. For a heavily armored soldier, every step became harder. The weight of the armor, combined with the difficult terrain, reduced mobility. But Lapu-Lapu's warriors had a completely different advantage. They were light, they were unarmored, they knew the shoreline, they knew the water. This was their home. And that gave them something the Spanish couldn't simply buy with better weapons: environmental advantage. Modern militaries still recognize the same principle. If your opponent has superior technology, don't fight them where that technology is most effective. Fight where the terrain reduces its advantage. History would demonstrate this principle again and again. From the flooded rice paddies of Vietnam to the mountain passes of Afghanistan, the environment can completely change the balance of power. Don't meet strength with strength. Find a place where strength becomes weakness. Tactic number 2, rotating fresh fighters. Spanish accounts describe Lapu-Lapu commanding a much larger force, but instead of sending everyone into the battle at once, his warriors could attack in waves. The first group engages, then pulls back. The Spanish believe they're pushing the enemy away, so they advance. But as they move forward, another group of rested warriors enters the fight, then another. The Spanish continue fighting, while Lapu-Lapu's forces keep rotating. Fresh fighters replace exhausted ones, and every time the Spanish advance, they move farther away from their boats and deeper into difficult terrain. The longer the battle continues, the more exhausted the Spanish become. Meanwhile, new warriors keep entering the fight. It's a simple idea, but incredibly powerful. Keep your fighters fresh, while forcing the enemy to fight continuously. And then came tactic number 3, psychological warfare through sound. Magellan's chronicler, Antonio Pigafetta, survived the battle and described the incredible noise created by Lapu-Lapu's warriors: drums, bells, war cries. The battlefield became so chaotic that the Spanish struggled to hear one another's commands, and that wasn't simply celebration. Noise can become a weapon. When soldiers can't hear orders, communication breaks down. When communication breaks down, confusion spreads. And when confusion spreads, mistakes follow. Modern military training even uses controlled noise and chaos to test how well soldiers can make decisions under pressure. Lapu-Lapu didn't have modern military science. He didn't have radios. He didn't have tactical manuals. But on the shores of Mactan, he understood something timeless. You don't always have to destroy the enemy's weapons. Sometimes, you just have to destroy their ability to use them effectively. Most armies of the era believed that a battle ended when the enemy commander fell, but usually, that happened after most of the fighting was already over. Lapu-Lapu turned that idea upside down. Magellan stood out immediately. The plumed helmet, the ornate armor, the soldiers constantly looking toward him for orders. He wasn't just another soldier, he was the center of command, so Lapu-Lapu's warriors weren't simply told, "Fight the Spanish." They were given a much more specific objective: take down the leader. Spears and stones were directed toward Magellan, especially around the less protected areas of his armor. Eventually, Magellan fell, and once the commander was down, the entire Spanish force was thrown into chaos. The principle is simple: remove the head, and the body becomes much harder to control. Modern military operations use a similar concept when identifying high-value targets. But Lapu-Lapu had another problem to solve: Spanish steel. Filipino arrows couldn't easily penetrate European armor, so his warriors adapted. Instead of relying entirely on piercing weapons, they used bamboo spears, hardwood weapons, and stones. The goal wasn't necessarily to penetrate the armor. It was to overwhelm the person wearing it. A strong impact can still affect movement and balance, even when the armor itself remains intact. This is the basic idea behind adapting your weapons to the enemy's protection. Don't attack the strongest point. Find another way to create an advantage. And then came perhaps the most deceptive tactic of all: the retreat. To the Spanish, it looked like the Filipino warriors were losing ground, but that appearance could be misleading. Each withdrawal encouraged the Spanish to move forward, farther from their boats, deeper into the water, and farther into the battlefield chosen by Lapu-Lapu. The Spanish kept advancing, while exhaustion slowly took its toll. Their formation became harder to maintain, their options became fewer, and their path back to safety became longer. Then, when the Spanish were stretched thin, Lapu-Lapu's warriors launched another major attack. The same terrain that had drawn the Spanish forward now made retreat more difficult. It was the classic logic of an ambush: make the enemy believe they're winning, let them move exactly where you want them, then strike when their options are limited. And according to the interpretation you're using, these 6 ideas form the core of Lapu-Lapu's battlefield strategy. First, environmental exploitation, using terrain to reduce the advantage of superior technology. Second, rotational tactics, cycling fresh fighters into the battle while the enemy becomes exhausted. Third, acoustic disruption, using overwhelming sound to interfere with communication and coordination. Fourth, leadership targeting, identifying the key commander and focusing pressure on the person holding the force together. Fifth, adaptive armament, changing weapons and tactics when the enemy's equipment makes the original approach ineffective. And sixth, deceptive maneuvering, using apparent retreat to influence where the enemy moves. Together, these principles describe a central idea of asymmetric warfare. A smaller force doesn't necessarily have to become stronger than its opponent. It simply has to make the stronger opponent fight under worse conditions. And that's what makes Lapu-Lapu's story so remarkable. He wasn't a king. He wasn't an emperor. He didn't command a vast professional army. He was a datu, a local chief from a small island. No military academy, no formal doctrine, no radios, no satellites, no modern weapons. Just an intimate understanding of the water, the land, his own warriors, and human behavior under pressure. On April 27, 1521, that knowledge was enough to turn the battlefield against Ferdinand Magellan, and the man who arrived believing he had the technological advantage would never leave Mactan alive.